Terry Gilliam has turned the spare bedroom of his modern Putney flat into a miniature film studio. And that's where he puts the animations together.
This particular scene was at the end of an arts program. David, it's just a hand starts coming in, closing in to grab at the fig leaf. Tug of war now ensues, pulling back and forth. Eventually, it's pulled away, this hand.
All right, well, after Baron Munchausen came out, it was a huge bomb. I'm talking, like, unbelievable bomb.
And I was very surprised it was a bomb because I remember the press coming out. Well, nobody was a savvy film geek like they were back then.
But no, the thing is, a movie, that budget was a $100 million budget on that movie.
Yeah,
no
I'm
way
not
surprised
a bomb because there was like no way you could make it.
And there's
money
no.
back.
Well, I just remember.
So
I remember seeing they showed clips. He was on David Letterman talking about the film, and I showed clips. I was like, "Wow, that looks fantastic." The clips, like Eric Idle chasing the fast bullet, and I thought, well, if this is anything like Brazil and Time Bandits, this is going to be a lot of fun, and this is going to be great. And yeah. Right after the first week.
Well, even if it made a profit, it would never make its money back because the budget was just way too big.
After Baron Munchausen, there was talks about him doing a Watchmen project based on the Alan Moore graphic novel, which would later be turned into a film by Zack Snyder. But this was a screenplay written by Sam Hamm, who wrote the original draft for the Batman, Tim Burton's Batman movie. I read that script. It's terrible for the Watchmen.
Well, yeah, because he does it like a comedy.
And they couldn't figure out how to make the film. They couldn't figure out how to do it. And Terry Gilliam was on record saying the only way you can do this film justice is that you turn it to a miniseries.
Miniseries, right.
And so he gave up. So he wound up focusing on something a little more commercial.
Well, a little bit more commercial. He decided to go something with a real narrative, something that had a beginning, a middle, and an end. Nothing too heavy on fantasy. He decided to do a more realistic tone. And he cast, of course, Robin Williams, who he just worked with in Baron Munchausen, and he also cast Jeff Bridges, who would later begin a relationship with him, who would work on other films with him. The film was The Fisher King, and it was written by Richard LaGravenese, a good writer. And the film...
Mercedes Rule, don't forget about her.
Yes, who I believe won an Oscar for the film.
Yes. And Amanda Plummer.
It is probably his most realistic film in terms of what we were talking about earlier.
Would you say realistic or would you say commercial?
I wouldn't say his most commercial, but it's definitely up there. You know?
I would say it's his most Hollywood film.
It's his most Hollywood
Well, that's
film.
what I mean by commercial.
You know why? Because he didn't really write the screenplay, you know.
Yeah, and I would say, but there are elements of pseudo-fantasy in a sense that they're all, you know,
they're toned, but I'm saying it's toned down.
But it's done with Gilliam's signature burst of creativity, you know, his way of approaching things.
And it's also the actors, especially Jeff Bridges, you can clearly see the way he's his antic nature in the film. You can see that Terry Gilliam's almost putting himself into the Jeff Bridges character on how people should react in this world.
Well, I'm saying I think that Jeff Bridges is playing Terry Gilliam. I mean, if you look at it, they have the same hair, you know, the long hair, and the kind of hippie-ish, you know, just like he is. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Jeff Bridges looked at him as a template for this character. And, you know.
I like Fisher King a lot. I think it's a very well done film for what it's trying to be, and I think that everybody in it is excellent. We didn't
nominated for Best Picture. I
have to say we didn't even mention Michael Cheater, who has only 2 scenes, and he's hilarious in both scenes.
Yeah, everybody in this is excellent. All the performance. This is the one I really feel that he, instead of paying so much attention to what's on the screen, he decided to work with the actors. And this is the one I really feel that he really cared about the characters and really got a good performance out of everybody.
Also, there's some sort of like beautifully done moments. Like everyone talks about that scene in Grand Central Station. But the way that's directed and handled is so well done. And
well,
how he had to do that in the middle of the night and everything. And
every time you saw the night on camera, that was just visually just popped right off the screen, right in your face.
My problem with the film, and I think this is a big one, is it's a very long film. It really is. I feel it could have had another 10 minutes cut out easily. It drags a bit in places, and that's a very big flaw. But all the performances are excellent.
I think the film is paced just right. I mean, I love how they develop the characters in a way that you understand. You understand why Jeff Bridges wants to help, and it's for self-serving reasons. Why he wants to help Robin Williams' character. You know, and it's interesting how he remains sort of a selfish douchebag throughout that whole thing until he finally reaches his arc. I love the relationship as it's developed between him and Mercedes Ruehl. And that could have been too cloying. Mercedes Ruehl could have been, under any other director, that could have been a really annoying character, and we could all have thought that that was the most unrealistic relationship in the film, but they made it work.
Yeah, well, I'll give all the credit to Mercedes, a lot of the credit to Mercedes Ruehl, not all of it, but a lot of it. She's terrific. She steals every scene she's in. She
Yeah,
really she did deserve an Oscar, and she got it. But either way, it was a pretty decent success. I mean, probably it's his most critically acclaimed picture because, I mean, it had a crossover appeal. Brazil was a niche market, but Fisher King really went around. It got critics, got nominated for Best Picture, all these awards, and it established Richard Lagavanese as a writer.
This is probably his biggest commercial success.
Yeah, no, his next film would be.
Well, yeah, the next one, 12 Monkeys.
Bruce Willis, and probably one of his best performances.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And Brad Pitt, who got his first Oscar nomination, who's very good.
And you should also add it's a remake.
And it is, yes, it is a remake of
La Jetée.
La Jetée, yeah. I thought Brad Pitt's a little overrated in it because he's a scene chewer in it. You know, I'm going to do crazy by doing funny things with my hands and my eyes.
But you know what? He is very funny in it. You know, I have to give the guy credit. He is. I'm very entertained every time his character is on the screen.
I like him in the movie, but when I see him in the film, I really feel he's trying too hard. He's like, "This is the film I'm going to get an Oscar for, so let me really do something crazy."
I don't. Yeah, but I don't know if he knew he could get an Oscar for that.
But he knew it was a role he could show off in and really get some attention because it's a really crazy character. What I love about the film is all the course when you have time travel films, because this movie deals with time travel, you have paradoxes. And the paradoxes are really cleverly put into the film. In fact, that's one reason why...
It's a very strong script.
I think it's probably his best script in terms... I'm talking as a script. Brazil is a great script, but it would not be a good film if it didn't have a good director like him. 12 Monkeys could have been directed by someone else and be a very good movie. I don't know if it'd be as good as what we got on screen, but this is a terrific script. And I love the dark look in this film. It is visually the most, I think it might even be as impressive, if not more so, than Brazil.
I would say there's a lot of this that reminds me of Brazil in terms of like the future.
It's like, I would say it's Brazil after
and you can still have that like sort of bureaucratic kind of like rule.
Yeah.
You know, where people are just throwing anything into the past, try to stop to change the future, but they're just not listening to each other.
Well, the people that have send Bruce Willis back into the past, those are the people that are running the city of Brazil, as far as I'm concerned. His next film was a film that was long in development, and when you hear the names, you think, absolutely perfect. Hunter S. Thompson and Alex Cox. But nope, they had a big falling out. In fact, Alex Cox wrote a script. They were supposed to do Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. It was rumored for years. This film was kind of like On the Road, the Jack Kerouac book. It was, for years, all these people were attached to make it, and it just could not happen. And it was about to happen with Alex Cox, who wrote the screenplay. And in fact, there's a great DVD out there you should see called My Breakfast with Hunter, where you see Alex Cox meet with Hunter S. Thompson. And you see him pitching the ideas, and then you see the film literally fall apart in front of you, where you see Hunter S. Thompson yell at him and scream at him and walk out, and then you know he's never going to come back and the movie's over. Terry Gilliam comes in with not much time. He writes a completely new script. Unfortunately, he said that because of some Writers Guild rules, because they gave credit to Alex Cox, so he really didn't get the contribution he should have. But he cast Johnny Depp, who would go on to become one of his favorite actors.
And Benicio del Toro.
And Benicio del Toro as Dr. Gonzo. And
Raul Duke is Johnny Depp. That's the fictional Hunter S. Thompson.
Right. It's kind of like Naked Lunch. That it's not the easiest film to put up on...
Perfect. That's a perfect...
On screen. But yet, he does it as well as anybody could. And I think the film works on three different levels. Johnny Depp, Benicio del Toro, and the surreal special effects he blends in there. Is it a fulfilling movie from beginning to end? Maybe not.
I'm going to say that as a person who is an incredible fan of Hunter S. Thompson, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is one of my favorite books, hands down. And I was so psyched when Terry Gilliam was on board to do this, because like, perfect. I was disappointed because I love Alex Cox as well. He would have been perfect. But when they when it turned out that Terry Gilliam's name was attached to this, excited. Then they said Johnny Depp was going to play Hunter S. Thompson. Odd, but okay. I like Johnny Depp. See what he's going to do. I like the film. I don't love it. And my problem with, and this may be because
We saw this together,
We did.
remember?
Maybe it's because I'm too attached to the book that I have my own idea, my personal idea of what a Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas movie would be. But my problem I have with the film is that Gilliam is too in love with the surreal elements, what I would call like the Marx Brothers, like, you know,
I love that.
crazy moments, that he loses sight of what the book was really about, to me anyway. About the idea that the 60s there was this promise. There was this promise that the 60s was supposed to be all about, that we're going to be all liberals and it's going to be all free love and all this stuff. And then the 70s arrived, and it was like people went back to being yuppies. People went back to, it became the me generation. And it was about that sort of melancholy, and a drug-induced melancholy that came about as a result of not fulfilling that promise that the 60s was supposed to.
You don't see that at all in the film.
And
I was gonna say, I think you do.
No.
I don't,
because as you go halfway through the film and then into the end, you see things just. It's like the wheels are coming off the bus.
You see, to me, you see a lot of freak show elements and quintessential Gilliam moments that are surreal and funny in themselves. But I find that the substance isn't there. You know, there's like that. There's that beautiful. I love that he filmed. One of my favorite moments in the entire book isn't even an interaction with everybody, where Hunter S. Thompson basically describes that loss of innocence, that how we're not fulfilling that promise. He calls it like we lost that last crest of the wave. And I love how he shoots that, where you have Johnny Depp as Raoul Duke walking through this party, and he walks by and locks eyes with the real Hunter S. Thompson.
That's a great cameo.
And that right there perfectly encapsulated for me what the rest of the book was about for me, but it was just done in that one scene, and then it just went back to Weirdsville. Like let's just do this because this is like so fun. Isn't it funny that we're making fun of these guys and they're turning into lizards and stuff like that, which visually is great and a lot of it's funny. My other problem with it, honestly, is Johnny Depp. I think Johnny Depp is doing a caricature performance and trying too hard to imitate Hunter
Well,
S. Thompson,
that's my
to
problem.
the point where it took me out of the film a lot.
Well, I'm going to get into what I don't like about the film. I read the book. In fact, I have a signed copy at home. That shows you how much a fan of the movie. I mean, the book I am. I feel, you know, visually it's incredible. It's amazing. Johnny Depp and Benicio del Toro really look like their characters. However, I think Benicio del Toro really becomes more of his character than Johnny Depp is. You know, becomes. Johnny Depp is, like you said, doing a caricature, and the problem is that it doesn't. It's not really grounded in reality. It's a little too like I feel like they're playing along. You know what I mean? I would love to see it taken a little bit more seriously, and like, you know, not because if they're playing, it's kind of like a comedy. You know what I'm saying? It's like I feel like a Saturday Night Live skit. It doesn't feel like they're playing it straight. I really wish they would have been more straight.
I agree with you there. I would say that's a great way of putting how it felt more like a Saturday Night Live skit in some parts.
Yeah, that's my problem. Is that they never felt real and realistic.
Because I didn't think it was a very good movie.
No.
Although I'm not talking about Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I didn't think this was a very good movie, but there was a screen take on Hunter S. Thompson before this called Where the Buffalo Roam.
Much
but I
better
thought Bill Murray was very good.
He was very
as
good.
Hunter S. Thompson in
movie's
that
terrible.
film. But the movie's terrible.
Yeah.
But in this one, and I'm not saying I don't think Johnny Depp's terrible in this. And in fact there are scenes where he's absolutely hilarious. But it's a caricatured performance. It's a very like I'm so conscious that he's imitating Hunter S. Thompson.
Do you think it was too hammy?
Too hammy, yeah.
I thought it was. I wonder. It was too caricatured. It was caricatured.
I never felt.
I
don't know if I could disagree with that.
Whereas
but for me it
Benicio
worked.
del Toro, it was both outlandish his performance, but at the same time,
What was that word? Outlandish.
Atlantis. It's a hotel in the Bahamas.
Outlandish.
Benicio del Toro was both
That's John
outlandish in his portrayal, but there was also a bit of a grounded in reality with his character as well. Like you feared him as well as you were amused by
I
him.
found him to be, and this kind of goes back to that where he starts growing the horns and becoming almost like that demon. But I did find him to be the quintessential bull in the china shop.
And I think going back to Johnny Depp, he relied too much on the stuff, that like physical. It was like he was playing a silent film comedian more than he was playing.
I can't disagree with that. I can't.
But
yet for me it worked.
But there's some great, like that whole sequence when they're in the casino and they're trying to get a drink, and it's at the revolving bar. That is comedic gold.
Well,
that is so fucking funny.
That is actually the scene that that caused Alex Cox and Hunter S. Thompson to have a huge blowout, because they were talking about how to do special effects. And originally, Alex Cox wanted to take Ralph Steadman, who was the illustrator who did the book, and make an animated sequence because he said they couldn't get real lizards. And Hunter S. Thompson goes, "God damn, I don't want no fucking cartoons in my movie." Do you know who would have been perfect for this movie? As much as you might disagree with me, David Lynch. David Lynch, at least, would have done it much better, I think.
I don't know about
Yeah,
that.
I don't know about that either. I think Terry Gilliam was a good choice.
I think like Eraserhead, the world that we see in Eraserhead would have been much better.
I don't
What's
think
his name?
Fear and
Who
Loathing-
directed Whitnell and I would have been a really good choice. I forget his name, but he would have been great.
All right. Well, after he did Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, Terry Gilliam wanted to do a project that he has loved to do for many years, but he wasn't able to do it. But somehow he finally got the financing, and everything fell apart. We were going to mention it very briefly. That's the Don Quixote story.
Right. And the documentary
Lost in La Mancha.
It's very good. See it. You will see, for once, you can see what it's like to make a movie when everything goes wrong. Unfortunately, the film was never finished. Johnny Depp was in it. There's some footage in the movie. You can see what they were trying to do. And this one could have been a good movie, but it just fell apart. His next film was a film for Miramax, which, based on the Weinstein's interference in films, was not a good idea because he was going to relive Brazil all over again, and that was the Brothers Grimm, which definitely isn't probably in one of his worst films. I mean, I think it's crap.
You know what? One of the problems I think is it's one of his most commercial films.
Sure as hell doesn't feel like it.
But when I say commercial films, I use that as a put down. It feels like it should be a by the book adventure movie with a little comedy mixed in, and it is just awkward from beginning to end. Even when you have decent performances. I'm not going to say good performances. When you have decent performances by like Heath Ledger and Lene Headey.
What about good actors and not good performances?
Matt Damon's horrible.
I disagree. I actually think he's good in it.
I thought he was horrible in it.
I don't know why you would think that. I thought he was
because to me, Matt Damon didn't seem like he belonged in that world. And I don't mean the world of Brothers Grimm. I mean the world of Terry Gilliam.
I thought he did a fantastic job, and I admire him for doing an English accent, so that's consistent with everyone else, and his accent's impeccable.
And his character was terrible.
I'm going to
disagree with that. I'm not defending the movie.
I'm going to blame the script.
But I thought he was fine.
The man who wrote the script is a writer by the name of Aaron Kruger, who wrote Scream 3. He wrote a lot of other commercial films. And it's a commercial writer trying to make something that's kind of Terry Gilliam-esque.
Well, you know what it is?
It's not a very good
There's
script.
a subgenre of film.
I kind of agree with that.
Where it's like, let's take famous historical people or authors and put them in a story that's similar to something they would write. You know, you see a lot of this, you know, like Hammett, the movie Hammett, where Dashiell Hammett solves a noir-like mystery, or the recent film with John Cusack playing Edgar Allan Poe. Poe solved his own mystery. Well, this is a Brother Grimm involved in a Brother Grimm-like story. The only problem, the big problem with this film is that the Brothers Grimm aren't the Brothers Grimm. It's like there's nothing in this film that suggests that these are the guys that would, you know, wind up writing some of the most famous fairy tales of all fucking time. And it could have been anybody. It didn't have to be the Brothers Grimm.
Well, that's a problem I have. Is like we were talking earlier about like greatest, you know, like it's like a greatest hits to me of Terry Gilliam, but not done well. It's like you have elements of Time Bandits in there. You know, with them, you know, running. You have elements of Baron Munchausen.
I would say this film reminds me a lot of Baron Munchausen and how disconnected it is with like different like vignettes. Whereas, but Baron Munchausen has a lot of great creative stuff that just like you just sit there and marvel at.
And Brothers Grimm
Whereas
doesn't.
Brother Grimm, it just feels like Gilliam's heart isn't really into this.
No, he's not.
It's an awful film. Now, after this film was held up for a while, the Brothers Grimm, so it didn't get released for a while. But during that same, you know, while it was on the shelf and there was all these problems, Terry Gilliam made an independent film, a truly independent film for him. And it came out around the same time, I believe, as Brothers Grimm. In fact, when it got released, no one would pick it up. No distributor would pick it up. So Terry Gilliam was in New York City with a sandwich board telling people to go see his movie. And that film is Tideland. People, this movie is a piece of shit. I fucking hate this movie. I fucking hate it.
Why?
You have the scene, you know, this girl and her father who live like nomads in the middle of nowhere. You know, of course, Jeff Bridges doing his Dude Light impression in a white trash trailer, who's a drug addict who ODs, and so the girl doesn't want to accept her father is dead. So she fantasizes about being somewhere else with her father somewhat in the picture. It is unbearable that this little girl who has to carry the entire film is the most boring fucking person on earth. It's just completely disconnected from reality. I don't even, fuck this movie.
I would say Tideland is probably, for me, being a Terry Gilliam fan, is the most disappointing film.
It's garbage
to watch, because I know that this was a personal project for him. In some ways, it wasn't a work for hire, and it just doesn't work.
No. I'm sorry to be so vocal about it. It's just, I really
and I agree with
had to
you.
sit through it.
The little girl, he could have casted someone much more.
The problem is, you know, what upset me is that, you know, they cast a very young girl, who I have nothing against.
And there
this
are
girl.
people out here. There are people out there that are fans of this movie, by the way.
I think it's decent. I don't have the angst and hatred that you have for this film. I reserve for Brothers Grimm, because that film I really almost hated with a passion. And Tideland, I didn't mind. I didn't mind. I watched it, and I could see the flaws all over the place. I could see what he was trying to do that he didn't quite execute correctly. I had no problems with the girl. I thought Janet McTeer was very, her character was somewhat interesting in there. Jeff Bridges, whether he was Dude Light or not, that was also a tragedy. That's also a fear thing, too, that this girl has to rely on fantasies because of the immense tragedy of losing her family.
Well, this is
so I found it to be a decent film. Is it one of my favorites of his? No.
Garbage. Let me tell you what I I'm sorry, not to interrupt. Just what I don't like about it. I feel bad for the young girl. She has to carry the entire film. They could have got someone a little older, you know, maybe a little better, someone who's more experienced. Problem is in this one is that Terry Gilliam didn't really. He had complete artistic control. He had no one, you know, guiding him, and so this is one that I think he had full power to do whatever he wanted. And this is one where it shows that he really needs someone to reel him in, because the fantasy sequences just grow tiresome after a while. There's one after the other, and the girl, like, she has an imagination, but it's not an interesting imagination.
I think you just have a problem with children.
No, I
would say that the whole film is predicated on this girl escaping into her fantasies. It's kind of like his adult take on Alice in Wonderland in a kind of way, but for some reason it doesn't have that soul. That like emotional weight to like really get you invested in what's going on there. It's just a bunch of like darkly, you know, daydream sequences that this girl has. And it's just, and it's Gilliam's excuse to see how creative can I be and how dark can I go.
Yeah, I disagree with you guys.
I found it very uninvolving.
It's very self-indulgent, and so you know what it's like? It's like a bad acid trip. It's really what it is. It's like Alice in Wonderland is a good acid trip. This is a bad acid trip.
I was going to say, I compare it to a fever
I would say
dream.
it's a fake acid trip. I would say it's like somebody's idea what they think an acid trip is, and it's.
I don't see it as an acid trip. I see it as like a fever dream.
Yeah, well, even if you want to describe it that way, I still think it fails in that regard. It just feels very kind of like he was so caught up in the production design. It's like he forgot to like find the emotional resonance that's supposed to be there for us as an audience.
The young girl has
like why are we witnessing this?
His next film was a film that he was working on. It was a project that he was working on with Heath Ledger, and Heath Ledger died in the middle of the making of the film, and it caused a very big problem because they didn't finish all of his scenes. So the film was shut down, of course, Terry Gilliam having bad luck, but luckily a lot of people love Heath Ledger, so a lot of his friends came in and volunteered to help finish the film.
The Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus.
That's the movie, and you had Johnny Depp and Jude Law come in and do
Colin
Farrell do play a role, and I'll give credit. He does a very brilliant job of filling in the gaps with the other actors. You know, with the
it could have been worse.
It's not a good movie. It's a step up from Tideland, but it
really
got the
feels
same problems
like
I have with Tideland.
Something got derailed with the Heath Ledger death, and he tried to figure out a way to tie it all together, because I don't know what the script was originally like.
I would love to read it.
I like that though.
But the problem I had though was that
it feels unfinished.
It does feel unfinished, and it feels like it's like the way they try to tie it all up. It was set up to think that this character's supposed to have this arc, right? And out of nowhere, he turns out to be the bad guy at the very end.
I thought that was a little confusing, yes, but it's something that I'd like to go back and see again and see where the narrative shift is, where they turn him into the villain. But there's some great Terry Gilliam has set pieces in there that I love. I think the colors are... when they have that whole thing where the midget is dressed like a child and then he's beating the child or whatever on the stage, I thought that was hilarious.
My favorite set piece in that whole film was when he has all those like wealthy ladies go through the Imaginarium, and I thought that was kind of brilliant.
Does this measure up to Brazil, Time Bandits, 12 Monkeys? No, but is this a much bigger, better step up from Brothers Grimm and Tideland? I feel yes.
I feel it's a step in the right direction, but the problem is we'll never know what the film could have been like if Heath Ledger was in the entire film.
Well, that's
something I'm not going to blame him for.
I enjoyed Christopher Plummer in it.
Christopher Plummer I loved. I liked a lot of the actors, like Andrew Garfield, who's now in Spider-Man. I just thought the script was all over the place. I didn't like, the backstory with Heath Ledger's character with the gangsters. I didn't think that was really interesting.
Well, I didn't mind that. I just felt like he had a different movie, and he had to change how he's going to finish that, like how he was going to tell that story once Heath Ledger died. And when he came up with this new idea of having different actors play him throughout the Imaginarium, wherever he was at, he had to figure out a way to end the story now.
I think it's
that he
clever.
Didn't have before. I
think it's clever how they kept the movie going with even though Heath Ledger.
It was a very imaginative idea.
It's the only way that it could have gone.
But I think scripting wise, the way he decided to end it, it's just too pat. It's too what the fuck.
The problem I have with Terry Gilliam, is visually he's very obsessed with visuals. It's a lot of style over substance.
That's completely wrong.
And a lot of this last one, Dr. Parnassus,
I think
this one
more.
and the last few films we talked about, I think is all style over substance.
Where I agree with you, and I agree with you, is in the beginning of his career, the first half of his career where he peaked, he was able to find that combination. But where I agree with you is his last films, and some of it was out of his control. Because let's face it, also, in some ways, Terry Gilliam, you could argue, was his worst enemy, burning bridges, studios, stuff like that. But he also had a lot of bad luck.
The perfect example is that Lost in La Mancha movie.
Yeah,
and his lead dying.
I think his movie was called The Man Who Was Don Quixote or something like
that. Lost in La Mancha.
No, Lost in La Mancha is the doc. It's the man who chased windmills.
Was that what? I thought, okay, well...
Well, anyway, let's just call it his Don Quixote project.
Something like that.
But that was out of his control, and Dr. Parnassus was out of his control.
That I'll give you credit. I concede to that.
But... in certain degrees, yeah. Sometimes, with his lesser films, you do see this thing where we're trying to get that that great production design and that whatever it is that's in his head, that look, that visual that he wants to get there, and make it perfect takes precedence over characterization.
Exactly. That's why I feel he has visual ideas.
Some of that he does have sometimes an issue with that, but I can't say you can say that about him across the board.
Well, here's what I feel. It's when he gets a script, he doesn't look at the script so much as first. He goes, I have these visual ideas, and let me find a script that can go with this visual idea. That's why I have a lot of, that can be sometimes good, sometimes bad. Tideland's a perfect example of that.
With real auteurs, though, that strike the balance between their actors and their visuals. David Lynch is the same thing. David Lynch will say, I had this idea for Blue Velvet because I had this image of an ear with an ant on it. And the next thing you know, boom, you have this whole spectacular movie of Blue Velvet because he had this image of the ear. Just like the story you brought up with the girl suntanning herself in the middle of the apocalypse.
Right. Becomes Brazil.
You have the auteurs that can take a small idea and they can expand this. How many directors can we say can do that these days?
Very few, because you know what? The one thing that's very sad, we should wrap this up, but people like Terry Gilliam, they don't really exist anymore, and you're not really going to see them today in this commercial world.
Is there anybody that can compare with a Terry Gilliam type person that's directing films today?
Even if you don't like Terry Gilliam, there's nobody else like him. I'll give you that.
I would say that...
Tim Burton, maybe.
Tim Burton, in the beginning of his career, showed that promise.
Tim Burton. Is basically Terry Gilliam who sold out.
Okay. Well, I hope that you enjoyed our show. That was our Terry Gilliam show. Please share. Look for us on the CineFiles page on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you.
Quiet!
Okay, let me get back into character.
The character of Ed Samuelson?
Yes. Stop it, you're making me laugh. Stop it! Hi, I'm Edwin Samuelson. Welcome to the CineFiles. And as you can see, I'm laughing. I don't know why I'm laughing, because these two guys are making me laugh. Okay, good. I got that out.
Why are you talking with an accent all over? I got that out.
And you bastards are going to put these outtakes at the end of the DVD, aren't you? Like you did last time.